Hey guys, Darkheart here, and we've just had the BlizzCon WoW panel finished. So I'm going to do some very quick coverage, and then we're going to have the more in-depth stuff coming in the later days. So today we're starting off with the dungeon coverage. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all the little different things they've got for dungeons, everything they mentioned, a few brief discussion points, and that's that. So we'll start off with their focus. Apparently their big focus is dungeons as endgame. Now, the big thing which they said, which really surprised me, and I'll cover a little bit later, is they want dungeons to be an alternate path instead of raiding. Yeah, if you don't like raiding, they're saying that you can have dungeons as your new PvE endgame, and frankly that is huge. Now, a big thing they're doing with Legion is they're doing this cool new scaling system, so all the mobs will scale you in the world and then bring the system into the dungeons, and this is how they're going to try and keep dungeons relevant, because their big thing is dungeons will be relevant. We thought they were going to be relevant because they would add like profession mats to them. No, the way they're going to remain relevant is the monsters are going to keep hitting you hard, and that's what it says exactly here. So there will be 10 dungeons in total, 5 level up dungeons and then 5 max level dungeons. I'll go through a few of these dungeons quickly, as they did give us the lore behind them, and lore is meant to be very big. Each dungeon is going to have a major plot point which will carry on from the questing, and they're there to finish off the hubs that you'll cover. So you start off storyline and you finish it in the 5-man. Apparently every single 5-man is completely central to the lore and is required to get a real understanding. So, quickly rattle through them. I have Azshara. This is going to be a Naga themed thing. That's that. Neltharians Lair. This is going to move the Drogma, the weird troll-like creatures which are playing around with the High Elf Taurens. Halls of Valor. This is going to be the big Vrykul stuff. And the interesting thing about the Halls of Valor, and they gave us this little bit of info about it, is that we are going to be racing against time, as they say, against the God King of the Vrykul, and the God King of the Vrykul, that's his name literally, has allied himself with the Legion. So we're going to have some pure Vrykul, some ascended Vrykul, like the Halls of Valor, where basically it's Odin and all those kind of guys straight from mythology, and then we're going to have the corrupted Vrykul who've gone all Legion heavy. So anyway, we're racing against the God King to go into the Halls of Valor to try and get a piece of a pillar of origination, or a pillar of creation. Basically there will be a bunch of fragments of this pillar, and we need all of the fragments to get into one of the later on raids. So we're going to have 4 fragments that we pick up through doing quests in the questing zones, then some we get from dungeons, some we get from raids, and that's how we're going to like finish off that first part of the story. So Halls of Valor is all about racing against this thing. Darkheart Thicket, this is our first Emerald Dream 5-man. Now, Ian Hazukotis said that we are saving an ally, assuming that we follow the storyline of Stormheart, which I have here, or Stormrage even. Stormrage is basically the Emerald Dream book, which they're repurposing all of the lore into the game. So basically, we're rescuing this guy, Malfurion, and that's going to be that. Almost 100% that is where we're going. Violet Hold. Apparently, Violet Hold is no longer part of Dalaran. They said so in their little press thing. And as Dalaran moved closer to the Broken Isle, weird stuff started to happen, and then that's where Violet Hold sprung from. So that's sort of that. And as you see at the bottom, tackle in any order. Again, because of the way they're doing the scaling, you will pick which 5-mans you do based on where you quested. So if you quested in High Mountain, then you'll do Neltharians Lair, right? Because that's part of that storyline. So where you go will be based on where you are in the storylines. They haven't said if you have to complete up to a certain quest objective to do them. I don't know, we don't know, but I would probably assume so from what they've said. Alright, this is a in-game pic of the Halls of Valor on the High Gate. Looks really cool. Then we go on to the 5 max level dungeons. Vault of the Wardens. Now this is where the Demon Hunters will start out. The reason why the Demon Hunters escape is the Legion attack, right? The first Gamescom trailer we saw of Gul'dan going to Illidan's tomb, you know, in the weird crystal thing, this is what awakens the Demon Hunters. So the Wardens are desperate. They're being attacked by the Legion directly. They've got this army of Demon Hunters. They kind of have to free them, otherwise they're all going to get wiped out. So apparently what will happen is you'll finish off the Demon Hunter starting area by leaving, And then once we get back to max level, we'll go back to try and work out what Gul'dan wanted with Illidan's body. Those are the exact words from Ian himself. So that's that one. Black Rook Hold. Now, Black Rook Hold, that is, if you've read any of the War of the Ancients novels, basically Lord Ravencrest, who was Illidan's mentor. This is his sort of like family home, and it's this big, big thing. This was meant to be like one of the last bastions against the Legion. Apparently this has completely failed, and we're going there to confront Ravencrest himself. An interesting thing that Hazukotas says is that we are following Illidan's trail to Black Rook Hold. So there's going to be some weird sort of potential alliance going on between Illidan and his old mentor, or maybe he's confronting his old mentor because of some Legion corruption. We don't quite know. I will jump ahead to this screenshot we have here. This is a screenshot from the instance, and who's this guy? It's a demon hunter. So there's definitely some weird alliance thing going on, I believe, anyway, between Ravencrest and Illidan. Again, we still don't know if Illidan is friendly from the beginning. We know he becomes friendly later on, but he might start off with like a semi, anti-hero, villain-esque role, then turns hero. So we may not have Illidan on our side from the very get-go. Jumping back, Helheim, this is basically the counterpoint of the Halls of Valor that we saw here. So this is all like crazy Ascension stuff. Helheim is basically hell. It is a ship of the damned, and we're apparently escorting a precious cargo and protecting this precious cargo. Now, this is where you're meant to go if you're a Vrykul and you've been damned. Who fits that theme really well? Sylvanas. She's not a Vrykul, but she's being kept alive by them. What I imagine will happen, and we see Sylvanas in the Legion cinematic, which looked amazing, by the way, fighting alongside Baron. I think what will happen is she will die. She will go on to Helheim, and we need to rescue her or do something weird with her body. She's gotten loads of story points hinted at quite heavily, and finally meeting her end. This, I think, is where it will be. Then we have two more set-up raid 5-mans. Suramar is one of the first two raids that we start with. So we have Suramar, which is the Night Elf City. The Noble District, this sounds really cool. Apparently, we're going to infiltrate a giant party going on between all the noblemen. And basically, we're using this one time as a chance to strike at their leader. Sounds cool. Apparently this is something they've never done before, so I imagine we're going to have maybe weird dialogue options, maybe branching pathways. I don't know. He seems very excited about the weird stuff they were putting with this. We don't know. Suramar Catacombs is what it sounds like. It's the catacombs. Apparently the catacombs run underneath the entire city. So this will be a giant sort of underground, undead night elf vibe. But this will lead us into the raid. So again, and he said himself, a mini achievement. It sounds like these 5-mans will be required to get into the raiding, and it kind of makes sense what we looked at with the leveling zones, where they finished off the quest, and he also said you needed all 4 pillars to reach the final zone. These two 5-mans are in the final zone. Suramar is the 110 zone. So what I think we'll have to do is we have to do all the leveling dungeons to get the pillars. We then move into the max level dungeons, finish off your plot points, get the remaining pillars, do the 2 Suramar 5-mans as like mini achievements to then go into the Suramar raid. I don't know. Pretty interesting stuff. Apologies if I'm talking quite quickly, by the way. So, we get into this. Now we get into this. Challenge modes are being reworked into the Mythic and / Heroic modes. So it sounds like we'll have normal mode, and then we'll only have challenge mode. So we won't have normal, heroic, challenge. We might do, but it sounds like it's just going to be normal mode and challenge mode. The way challenge mode will work is, again, following this whole scaling system. Apparently, for all of their scaling, our players or our characters will never get scaled down. The world will get scaled to us. So you won't suddenly go from 40% crit to 12% crit, Now, apparently, again, it's focusing on the combat, and apparently stuff will be scaling, yeah? So this will always be relevant regardless of what your item level is, regardless of anything. It will apparently always be just as difficult. Again, they're going for this whole unbound progression with new modifiers to master each week. This is all like, wait, what? So basically, the way it will happen is if you've ever played Diablo, you know what like rift keys are? You'll get like a challenge key, basically a rift key. You get this, they don't know how yet. Say you do it from quests or whatever, but you get your challenge mode key. It will basically give you an portal to a random 5-man, so you can't pick which 5-man's the easiest or which is best for your class. You get teleported to this random 5-man. It will start at like level 1. You complete it within a timer. It goes up a level, so then it's level 2. It then becomes more difficult. You then get the new modifiers coming in, level 3, level 4, and then eventually you'll just hit a brick wall and you can't progress anymore that week. So what are these modifiers? Well, apparently they're going to be like actual big modifiers. I'm a big Path of Exile fan. This is basically just ripping content from Path of Exile. This is amazing. This is like something I've wanted Blizz to do for ages. Thank you, Blizz. I'm genuinely excited for 5-mans. This looks really cool. So, here are some example modifiers. Enemies enrage at 30% health. In the panel, they showed that it would be 100% increased damage. And he was talking about how you couldn't AoE packs down because suddenly they would all enrage and people get one-shots. You have to like single target this guy. Maybe that guy's important to burst. You'd have to like actually think about it. Promotes coordination. Sounds pretty cool. Another one. Extra enemies. Pretty bland, but could be fun. Corpse explodes shortly after death, and apparently they'll leave fire, which doesn't disappear or dissipate. So that could be quite interesting, you know, like pulling packs across the entire room, pulling them back to the start because you don't want to have fire everywhere. That could be quite interesting if they start doubling up on modifiers. So suddenly you have double enemies, and every time an enemy dies, they leave a patch of fire on the floor. That sounds really cool and actually quite fun and quite engaging gameplay. You might have some interesting things with Death Knights like gore fiending 20 mobs in one spot, kill them all at the exact same time, run away from the fire. We don't know. Periodic damage over time. Apparently there might be a challenge mode where the entire group takes constant damage and the healers need to try and keep this up. I can imagine this will be great if you're a Resto Druid, and absolutely awful if you play a Paladin. If you play a Paladin, this might be the worst thing in the world. But anyway, it's cool and it's exciting. So this is what it's going to look like. So here we're going to have like our Rift key or Challenge Mode key or whatever they want to call it. And you can see these little modifiers. We don't know what all these different icons are, but you know, here's an example of that. So you'll get in your group, I imagine. I'm assuming you have to be in a pre-made group of 5. You then put your key in, you start the challenge, you get teleported to it. They haven't said if it will use a key for all players. So for example, if only one player has a key, if 5 people can use that key. If that is the case, then potentially you'll have a near limitless amount of keys unless you only can get like 3 a week or whatever. But again, we're stepping into speculation at that point. So I don't know, pretty interesting stuff. And then the rewards. And again, when I said at the beginning, they want to keep it relevant. And this could be your potential replacement to raiding. This is how. So here we have the beautiful guys on stage, and behind them, Legion Challenge Mode rewards. So at the end of each challenge mode, you'll get a loot chest, right? And depending on the difficulty of the key, so if it's your first run through, it'll be a level 1 key, you get a level 1 chest. It might be a fixed item level, and then imagine a level 2 chest is 5 item levels higher. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. In my mind, that makes sense. They couldn't have level 1 chests always give the exact same amount of loot, because then you would purposely only do level 1s for quick loot, which was appropriate to your item level. However, I will say now, this is an issue they had back in Diablo. If you have to grind through like 15 levels to start getting relevant gear, that will become incredibly frustrating. That will have to be a system they have to look at. In Diablo, you had the issue where you had this thing called trial keys. Basically, you had to do a timed kill loads of mobs to get your key, right? So you did like this trial, depending on how many mobs you killed, over how many waves you killed, you then got your key. People hated having to grind out the whole pre-steps. Imagine if before you can get anything useful, you need to do like 15 levels of 5-man. That could be quite frustrating, but again, we don't quite know how they're going to scale the loot. I imagine this is going to be very heavily criticized and reworked and retuned in beta. Again, this implies why we might have a up to September release and might need like a substantially long beta. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. So again, as I just said, jackpot for highest level cleared each week. So you want to reach the highest level you can, and then at the end of the week, we guess on reset, you'll basically get a mail or something sent to you saying, congratulations, you reached rank 20, here is your amazing item level or artifact weapon upgrade token or whatever it is, yeah? And again, genuine alternate path to raiding. Sounds exciting, but bear with me, that might also be quite bad. Imagine if you're a raider and you are committed to being the best raider you can be, and you need to spend your 3, 4, 5 raiding nights every week on all of your different characters, and then also do endless 5-man spamming to get gear appropriate to your raiding gear. Yeah, if the 5-mans can genuinely give gear equal or greater than the raiding gear, this will be required content for raiders. So again, kind of slippery slope. I don't know, it sounds pretty interesting. I'm pretty hyped for it. I hope you could understand a word of any of that quick rapid, but it's just there was a lot to cover. I'm Darkheart. Thanks for watching. I've just realised my jumper makes it look like I've got weird black screen on. I don't know. Anyway, subscribe for more BlizzCon content. Thank you, and bye-bye.